Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome from the Annie B. Jameson Elementary School, the Jameson Pops Orchestra. Welcome to the final general session of Learning Forward's 2016 annual conference. And now, please welcome Executive Director Stephanie Hirsch and Deputy Executive Director Frederick Brown.
Wow.
Were you all as moved as we were back there watching them while they go? Can we just give them one more round of applause?
Wonderful.
That was the Annie Jameson Pop Orchestra, and they were just amazing.
Wonderful.
And we were, so fortunate all week to just be able to hear some great student performances, and it just really makes this conference that's much more special for all of us. So, students, thank you. Thank you for reminding us why we're here and for enriching our learning experience.
Now I'm thinking this is our first time hanging out on stage together.
It is.
I just thought of that.
We've just been passing
Right,
by
passing
each
in the
other.
halls.
Yeah.
So we want to thank the incredible staff here at the Vancouver Convention Center for serving as our hosts this week. Can we give them all a round of applause? And a special thanks to the people in this room, the service staff, and everyone in this particular room as well. Just a wonderful, wonderful host for us. Please take a moment to thank them on your way out, if you would. And Stephanie, it's great to be back with you this morning during this general session.
Fred, it's great to be back with you again, and this has been just one wonderful conference. And for those of you who are new to Learning Forward in our conference, we hope that you have felt some sense of what we refer to as the Learning Forward family, and that you've had an opportunity to experience why we are so passionate about our vision and our mission. Teaching and learning for all just depends on you, and we will not accomplish this alone. We can accomplish it together.
You know, this conference, our program, as well as all of our services and everything that happened, and when we think about our provincial and our state affiliates, it depends on the engagement of our members as well as our stakeholders. Their success moves us closer to that vision.
Absolutely, and there are a few more people that we'd like to extend special appreciation to this morning.
Yeah.
So our Learning Forward Foundation, as you've heard, it's our not-for-profit organization that provides grants and scholarships that advance our shared vision.
The board members of the foundation make an incredible personal investment to raise the more than $50,000, and that's $50,000 US dollars a year in the form of grants and scholarships to advance our shared vision. On the screen, you can see some of the recipients of this year's scholarships.
Will the Board of Directors of the Learning Forward Foundation please stand so that we may extend our appreciation to you once more? Those of you present. We'd also like to thank a few trustees who will be leaving us this year. So it's kind of bittersweet because they have been amazing trustees, and we are so fortunate to have their leadership for the last 3 years. Deborah Jackson, a past president, and fortunately will be joining the Learning Forward Foundation board, and I know they're eager to have her service as well. Janet Samuels and Olivia Zapata. And Olivia will join the foundation. So we continue to activate their passion for our mission and for our organization. We also want to welcome our 2 new board members. Announce them if you haven't already heard. Val Brown from Seminole County, Florida, and Sharon Contreras from Greensboro, North Carolina. And at its meeting, the board elected Alan Ingram to serve as president-elect.
All right, so this is going to be fun. For everyone who contributed to the host committee's Raise the Reader fundraiser, it's time to play heads or tails. Do you remember that from that first day, heads or tails? So we're going to bring up one of our host committee members, Cheryl Mertland, to lead the fun. Cheryl, come on up.
Did you make your donation? I just made mine, so.
Oh my gosh.
So I get to play.
I don't have a sticker. I will,
Well,
lead us away, Cheryl.
Okay. First of all, on behalf of the host committee, I'd like to thank the Learning Forward family, and specifically Fred and Kristen for working together with us to bring the conference to all of you. and especially for Learning Forward to trust that by coming to Canada and to Vancouver, that we would be able to have the conference that they are known for having. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right. If you contributed to Raise a Reader and you got a little happy face sticker, it is now an invitation for you to stand to play heads or tails for a wonderful prize that will be delivered to you if you are the last person standing.
So I'm looking for, I see folks are rising around the room.
Go
Wonderful.
ahead and stand up. So if you were here on Sunday, you've already had the opportunity to play the game. If you weren't here on Sunday, it's very simple. I have a coin. Before I toss it, you are going to indicate whether you think it's going to be heads or tails. We are relying on the honor system here. So heads or tails. I'll flip the coin, I'll tell you the call, and then if you were correct, you stay standing, and if you got it wrong, you sit down. And I know some people that got out early on Sunday have been practicing, so they are ready for this.
Before you do tails, just turn around and see what's behind you, if you would just take that second.
Okay, so I'm about to flip the coin. I'd like everyone who's playing to indicate whether you think it's going to be heads or tails.
All right.
You ready, Stephanie?
Yep.
Let's see how far
Okay.
you got.
Okay.
All right. It is heads.
All
We're
right.
still in.
Okay, go ahead
watch
and
you
make
win.
your call again, heads or tails. Here's the flip. Boop. It is tails.
Oh.
So we still have a few people standing.
We
We're going
do.
to continue. Go ahead and call it, heads or tails. Here's the flip. It is heads.
Okay.
Some people
We still
standing.
have
got a
some
few
people
left?
standing. All
Yep.
right, go
Here,
ahead and
here.
make your call.
One there.
Heads or tails? It is heads. We still
think
have
they're all
one here. No, we still have one here.
We have
We
one.
have one over here.
Oh, one over there. All right.
Okay.
Do we just have the two? So one of you has to go heads and one has to go tails.
Call it.
We got heads over here.
Okay, here we go. It is tails.
Oh, yeah.
Congratulations. I just want to thank everyone who contributed to Raise a Reader to promote literacy programs in our local area for children and for adults. And the jar is still upstairs, or sorry, same level. The jar is still at the hospitality table if you'd like to contribute as you head to your last session.
All right,
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Cheryl.
Okay,
Thanks to the
thank
host
you.
committee for an amazing fundraiser. Can we give Cheryl and the host committee a round of applause? So, you know, we're heading to the other end of the continent for next year's conference. And 2017 will be in Orlando, Florida. Yes. So here's a little bit of what to expect in Orlando.
You could be larger than life, bigger than the world, living out the hopes and dreams of every boy and every girl. You could fly higher than the sky, shine brighter than the stars. You can have all you ever wanted.
All right, let's hear it for Orlando. Okay, now, so just so I can read the teleprompter.
Not supposed to tell.
So our host committee is already hard at work. They've built the program. They're making sure that all the attendees have a great experience. We're looking forward to a great conference. Do I look?
Do you look as silly
As
as
silly
me?
as you. That's the question I was going to ask.
I'm looking forward to it.
A wonderful conference. Did this mess up my hair? All right, so Stephanie, I'll turn it over to you.
On to a serious matter,
Yeah.
yes.
Let me put
You
these
want to take
back.
these for?
I will.
Thank you. This morning we had planned for 3 speakers, but unfortunately Avis Glaze will not be able to join us. And like you, I was really looking forward to hearing her message. So Fred will share several key ideas he felt Avis would want us to hear, and also he'll serve as the master of ceremonies and make the connection between Milton Chen and Denise Augustine. So thank you, Fred.
All right, thanks, Stephanie. Okay, well, as Stephanie mentioned, Avis will not be joining us, and like you, I was really looking forward to hearing her message, Poverty is Not Destiny. And I know I can't replicate Avis's message, but I'd like to just share a few thoughts about poverty and perhaps what we as educators can do to respond. In 2013, and I'm going to walk over here and grab my clicker. In 2013, the World Bank conducted an extensive study on global poverty. And at that time, the international poverty line was defined as $1.90 US a day. And in 2013, there were 767 million people in the world living at that level, out of a total population of about 7.1 billion. So that means roughly 10.8% of the world population living in poverty. Now the good news is that number has declined over that period of time, which is very good news. In the United States, the formula for determining poverty has been in place since 1960. And in the year of 2015, the poverty rate was determined as $12,000, considered $12,000 or less, was considered to be living in poverty. So that's roughly $33 a day. Now there are approximately in the US, 43 million people living in poverty in the year of 2015. It's a bit tricky when it comes to Canada because definitions can differ and vary across the country. But according to Canada Without Poverty, approximately 1 in 7 Canadians lives in poverty, and that's roughly 4.9 million Canadian citizens. Now we know the effects of poverty are very real and can have a major impact on how our students perform in school, so it's essential that we do everything in our power to combat it. There are many ways that a country or a region can deal with poverty and combat it in a way that responds to its horrible effects. I was in Cambodia earlier this year, which by the way is a wonderful place to visit if you've not been. And when I was there, I had a chance to see a beautiful country that has overcome poverty in some very interesting ways. According to the Millennium Development Goal Poverty Target, Cambodia is one of the best performers in poverty reduction worldwide. This year, according to the World Bank Poverty Assessment Report, in 2004, 53% of Cambodians lived in poverty. By 2014, it had decreased to 20%. Now, one of the biggest reasons for that reduction, increased rice production and prices. So a non-education reason. But the country worked hard also to provide greater road access to farmers and also improved irrigation. But despite those successes, the folks who live at the edge of the poverty line continue to realize that it could take just the slightest economic shift and thousands could find themselves back in poverty. So the World Bank made several recommendations to Cambodia, and so with the hopes that the country doesn't move backwards. Recommendation number 1, support children in rural areas to start school at a younger age and broaden access to education among minority students. Number 2, expand scholarships, school feeding, and similar programs that have shown to help reduce secondary school dropout rates. So in essence, those are 2 among many recommendations that were made to the country, and education is key among those recommendations. So we see that connection between education directly linked to reducing poverty levels. Now I know we would all agree that having access to an education is critically important. We must provide all of our children access to education. But that education needs to be powerful. It needs to be rich. It needs to be meaningful. As Pasi Sahlberg reminded us earlier, It needs to be equitable and excellent. So it's crucial that we surround our children with learning experiences that span their days, expand their years. Sarah Lawrence Lightfoot was one of our keynote speakers several years back. And I love how she described this notion of surrounding our children with learning. She stated, "School is what happens inside the walls of the schoolhouse. And sometimes it's educational. But education happens everywhere. And it happens from the moment a child is born, some say even before." She went on to say, "Productive collaborations between family and school therefore would demand that parents recognize the critical importance of each other's participation in the life of the child. The mutuality of knowledge, understanding, and empathy comes not only with the recognition of the child as a central purpose for collaboration, but also with the recognition of the need to maintain roles and relationships that are comprehensive, dynamic, and differentiated." When it comes to what we can each do in our schools to end the cycle of poverty, there's so much to say, and we don't have time to say it all this morning. But first, let me just say I'm so thankful for the many educators who love our kids and love the work. Your love is so important. It's so, so important, but it's not enough. In order to make sure that we reach our children and meet them where they are and take them to new heights, we have to create learning experiences that build on the gifts that all of our kids bring to the classroom. Every last one of them. It doesn't matter if they're in inner city Phnom Penh. It doesn't matter if they're in rural Alberta or the suburbs of Chicago. We have to look at our babies in preschool. We have to look at those who are in kindergarten, our middle-aged children who are in the middle grades, and certainly those young adults in high school. And we have to figure out what are the gifts that they bring, what are those flickers of light that they have within them that we can take and build to a flame that rivals the Olympic torch that we have outside these walls. So one of the key findings in the study of professional learning in Canada, that was released just 2 days ago, and many of you in the room were here to witness it. One of the key findings was many educators name developing their capacity to serve students in diverse needs, including poverty, as their highest priority. So let's consider how we can support those teachers so that they can be at the best and serve the students that they love so much. If I can channel Avis Glaze for just a moment, we can no longer allow a child's postal code to determine their future. We must have a laser-like focus on using proven instructional strategies with all of our kids and be vigilant in closing those achievement gaps. We've all heard those stories of amazing teachers who have found ways to reach our children, particularly those in greatest need. Some of you live those stories because you are those teachers. I had the honor of hearing Jahana Hayes. Many of you know that she is, in the United States, was named as the Teacher of the Year. And as I listened to her story, many examples of how she reached her children and supported their learning, I heard someone near me say, you know, she's amazing. We need to clone her. Well, later we'll hear Denise Augustine, another one of those inspirational educators who has found a way to celebrate the gifts of her children. We'll also hear from Milton Chen, who will share some innovative strategies K-12 educators have used to help take children to new heights. Wouldn't it be wonderful if all of our students could experience this kind of teaching and learning in their classrooms? So one way we can build our collective knowledge and skills to be amazing at scale, we believe as an association, is through effective professional learning. When it's done well, professional learning is a strategy to scale effective practices throughout the school, throughout the system. So instead of pockets of excellence, if we do professional learning well, all of our kids will have access to the kind of teachers we celebrate. This is so important, not just for our schools in all cities, in all provinces, in all states, but it's of particular importance to those communities in greatest need. I remember when I was an elementary school principal, At the end of the school year, my parents would approach me and ask if their children could be in a certain teacher's classroom. They would say or write letters explaining why a teacher's particular skill set would be a good match for their child. And I didn't know now or then what I would say now, but what I wanted to be able to say was, it doesn't matter what child or what classroom your child is in. In our school, teachers at each grade level regularly schedule time to collaborate as a learning community. They share their best practices with each other. They support each other. They seek outside expertise when they need it. They truly work collectively to meet the needs of all the children they support. So you see, it doesn't matter what classroom your child is in because your child will have access to the collective wisdom of all the teachers at that grade level. Now, can our schools solve all the problems associated with poverty? Not all, but we certainly have the power to mitigate many of poverty's long-term effects. We can do that together, and I know the people in this room can help make that happen. Thank you. As you listen to Milton Chen and Denise Augustine, I'd like for you to listen for the types of strategies they share and think about how any of these strategies can start to make a difference in the lives of children, particularly those in greatest need. Then I would ask you to think about how would you use effective professional learning to scale any of those strategies throughout your system, throughout your province, throughout your state. So our first keynote or guest speaker is Milton Chen. Milton is a senior fellow and executive director emeritus at the George Lucas Education Foundation in San Francisco. The foundation produces the award-winning Edutopia website on innovative K-12 learning. His book, Education Nation, was an incredibly influential book that I know many people in this room have read. He's going to speak this morning on innovative learning as a path to social justice. Please help me welcome Milton Chen.
Fred, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good morning, Learning Forward. Great to have another language represented here and to be in a place that values multiple languages and multiple cultures. So let me say by way of that, buenos dias, Learning Forward. Bonjour, Learning Forward, and zao shang hao. That's good day in Chinese. How do you say good morning in sign language? Something like that. That was kind of a good. I'm going to talk for 11 minutes, and I have a little theory about the importance of being concise in this digital age. It's really hard. It'd be easier for me to talk for 45 minutes, as I normally do, but to try to boil down to the essential elements, the themes of what I'd like to tell you about the connection of innovative learning as a path to social justice. And again, wonderful that Learning Forward is taking up this theme of social justice as an important goal of education. Let me start off by asking you to look at this photograph and see if you can spot a certain young boy in the 4th grade in a school on the south side of Chicago. Some people say, I'm looking for Barack Obama, but actually this was a community that he did work in about 30 years after this. You see this classroom of roughly half African-American students, roughly half white students, and a young Chinese boy and a Japanese girl named Janice Miyamoto. That's me, by the way, on the 3rd row, on the sort of 4th from the right. I show you this photograph of my 4th grade classroom to make the point that education offers the best opportunity for racial understanding, for learning about each other, reaching across traditional lines that separate us. On the south side of Chicago, there was more than a line. It was a freeway that separated the south side of Chicago. And on one side of the freeway, I guess you call it an expressway. I'm from California. We call it a freeway. On one side of that expressway, the Dan Ryan Expressway, was an African-American community. On the other side of that expressway was a white community. And these communities came together in that Bennett school. It was our opportunity to learn from each other and to cross those racial boundaries. I still believe that education offers the best hope that we have for mutual understanding across racial, cultural, linguistic barriers. So I'm going to talk about three things, and I'm going to start with the words of Nelson Mandela. Some of you may know this quote. Education is the most powerful weapon we have to change the world. Education is more than just helping our students learn and hopefully transition to college, hopefully transition to a job and a career. In my view, and I'm sure many of you share this idea, it is about improving the world that we live in, working towards peace, harmony, understanding. Our world faces some tremendous challenges. The more than 7 billion people on this planet, issues about climate change, issues about poverty, war, terrorism, you know that list of problems. Education is the most powerful weapon that we have to change this world. You know that Nelson Mandela, when he was in prison for 27 years, even during that time, he made sure to continue his education and continue the education of his fellow inmates, setting up a library, making sure that they talked about the books that they were reading, because he knew when they got out of prison that their education would define the quality of the democracy that they were creating. I'll just tell you one quick story. I can't resist. I've had a chance to do some work in South Africa in 1993, before the elections in 1994. I was there representing public broadcasting. And some of us were sitting around talking amongst ourselves, some South African educators, about what we were doing 8 years before that, in 1983. I said, well, I was a graduate student at Stanford. I was learning to do statistical analysis of data for research. Young man sitting next to me, he said, bowed his head, he said, do you see these two bald spots on my head? I said, yes. He said, that's where they put the electrodes on me when they were torturing me in prison. That was the difference in the lives that we were leading, but he was determined to use education as the weapon to move his nation forward, because at that time, he was working on adult literacy. He understood that the literacy of the adults in South Africa would be the path forward for greater prosperity for his nation. It would be the way to recover from this legacy of apartheid. The second point I'd like to make is that all students deserve innovative learning, especially the underserved students. For a long time, we didn't quite agree on this. You know, in education, we've had this very, how should we say, perhaps misguided belief that if students are not doing well in the education we're giving them, well, we just need to give them more of that kind of education. This led to remedial education. You're all familiar with this, that when students aren't doing well in math or reading, we need to give them more drills, more phonics, when in fact, my belief is, if they're not doing well in the kind of education we're giving them, we need to give them a different kind of education, a more innovative, more personalized, more powerful kind of education. I'm sure many of you agree with this, and I'm sure that the tide is turning around when students are not doing well, when they're coming from poverty, where they're coming from single-family households. We need to give them something different. So that's why I'd like to talk about the kind of work we do at Edutopia. Edutopia.org is just full of examples of more innovative learning, project-based learning, place-based learning, having students learn about themselves. What could be more important and more interesting to a student to learn about themselves, their family, their bodies, how their bodies work, their neighborhood, their community. But yet we start often from a point of view of curriculum, decided by, at least in the States, by curriculum committees in states. We rarely get to the point of saying, who are you as a student? Where are you from? Where did your family come from? All that can be tremendous curriculum for a more personalized approach. So I'm so excited, we were talking at the table earlier, about where we are in the history of the world, the history of technology. It would be very hard to give students something different and more innovative without technology. If you want to learn about indigenous cultures, be hard when it wasn't in your textbook. It would be hard if your teacher didn't represent that culture. Now students can immediately begin to learn about the first peoples of their communities. I like to talk about technology and especially these new low-cost devices as weapons of mass instruction. Every student now can have a weapon for instruction for carrying them much further than they have before. Here's just one example. Those of you who are teaching at the secondary level in high schools, I put it to you as a challenge. Do your students know how to build and design a hybrid vehicle? That's the new bar, because these students did that. And these students come from very difficult circumstances. They're from West Philadelphia. Some of you may know West Philly. Maybe some of you are from Philadelphia. This is an impoverished community, has been for a long time. But with the right curriculum and access to design thinking, to learning about hybrid vehicles, biodiesel fuel, that's all available on the internet. These students in West Philadelphia designed and built this award-winning hybrid vehicle. That's their teacher, Simon Hauger, who's an engineer. They learn design, they learn to build, they learn to test. You can't quite see the text there, but this vehicle is called the K1 Attack. Carbon fiber body, 55 miles per gallon, won top honors in competitions with college students. So if these students can do that in West Philly, so can your students. And what could be more important to students to learn about the future of energy and the future of transportation? I talked with Simon Hauger about 5 years ago. I said, this is exciting. I said, what are you going to do next? I thought that he might want to do some more projects. He said, what I'd like to do is create a school where students do these projects all the time. I said, well, that's a laudable goal. 2 summers ago, I was driving around the San Francisco Bay Area where I live. The voice of Robert Siegel comes on National Public Radio. And the first line of his sentence is, as you can see it there, you can hear this report, imagine a school where classes are organized not by subject, but by project. A school where classes are organized not by subject, but by project. The project brings together multiple subjects. He said, such a school exists, and it's in West Philadelphia, and it's called the Workshop School. I just about drove off the road. I said, oh my gosh, Simon's done it. And that is Simon Hauger's school, going back about 3 years now. The maker movement. Students can not only learn content, but can now begin to design and build things. Again, the lower cost of being able to do this, what normally was a $50,000, $25,000 maker lab, now you can make for $10,000. Here's one of our favorite stories of Quinn, a young boy, 13 years old, who makes and teaches his teachers, teaches his school board about what these tools are all about. I once gave a talk in Ohio, and they said, we'd like to invite Quinn to come show us how he does this work. He's holding up a little smartphone cover with his name printed on it. And so I said, yeah, please contact his family on the Central Coast of California. And they told me, well, we called up his family, and we talked to his mother. We said, we saw that film about Quinn, who went to the Maker Faire when he was 10, and by the age of 13, he was already teaching others how to do this work. We said to his mother, we'd like to invite Quinn to come to our school district in Ohio and talk about this work. And his mother said, well, on that day, Quinn would love to do that, but he's actually speaking at the Rome Maker Faire. One of my messages is that all of us should be teachers, and all of us should also be learners. I love the student performances. I'm trying to study some more piano. I could learn a lot from those students. My third point is that the achievement gap we talk about is really an experience gap. Students who are falling behind in school often have not had the right experiences to equip them to move forward in their schooling. I'll just give you one example. Basic experiences we used to take for granted when we were a more rural society. Growing something. There are students graduating from high school who have never put their hands in dirt and never grown anything. how can we expect them to understand the connection to the land, the connection to weather, the connection to their food, if they've never grown anything? It's purely academic, purely abstract for many students. There are students in San Francisco, where I live, who live 4 miles from the ocean and are graduating high school, have never seen it. That shows you how narrow the experience of our students is getting, in part due to the same technology that could open up their worlds, but they're usually looking down and texting each other and dealing with social media. So here's just one example, and here's something you can go back and do in your districts. It's called a BioBlitz. A BioBlitz is a census of all the plants and animals in a location. It can be done in a city park, it can be done in a backyard, it can be done on your school playground. It's been done in a number of national parks. Happy birthday, national parks in the US. I know here in Canada, Parks Canada celebrated its anniversary about 5 years ago, centennial. If you get a chance, look at Imani's BioBlitz video. I like her video because it, again, not only shows you how her learning came alive when she went into a national park, but then you see her 3 years later and how she was embarking on a STEM-related career. We'd like to talk about turnaround schools. I like to talk about turnaround kids and how quickly kids can turn around their learning if they're given the right experiences. iNaturalist.org is the platform in which students conduct a BioBlitz and document plants, animals, flora, fauna that they're seeing. They create their own personalized collection. This is what technology can do, their own personalized collection of all the plants and animals that they know. So again, technology and the internet make this possible. Let me just end with a quote from Martin Luther King Jr. You see him there 60 years ago at the march on DC. Martin Luther King said that the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. This is a quote adapted from a quote 100 years earlier in the 1860s by a Unitarian minister who was an abolitionist. So a century had gone by when Martin Luther King uttered this quote, and now we're more than 50 years later. The arc of the moral universe is long. It takes a long time to make these changes. But I do believe that through these new tools, these new experiences, the chance to share our work much more quickly, as you're doing here at Learning Forward, we can shorten that arc. That's my hope, and I want to thank you all for the work you're doing to make social justice a goal of education.
Milton, thank you so much for reminding us that all of our kids can be turnaround kids, and that if we give them access to innovative learning opportunities, they can grow and blossom. Really appreciate it. One more round of applause, please, for Milton Chen. As you heard Milton talk, you heard him talk about those key strategies and some of those ideas that we can remember. The charge for you all was to think about which of those strategies might I go back as a teacher leader, or principal, and advocate for in my system. So as you now listen to Denise, think again about other strategies that you might carry out from these conversations. If you remember, or for those of you who do not know, Denise is a district principal of Aboriginal education with the Cowichan Valley School District in Duncan, British Columbia. 8 years ago, in response to a call from First Nation community and her colleagues, she moved her work from guiding the learning of 5 to 12-year-olds to working alongside administrators and support staff. She provides leadership through side-by-side coaching, participating in action research, and facilitating experiential workshops. Augustine weaves story and research together, inviting us to open our hearts and our minds and imagine what education systems that devalue diversity and inspire innovation. Please join me in welcoming Denise Augustine. Oh, you don't need that, that's right.
Thank you, Fred. CM na Sauhwain, CM na Schwatlaqua, CM na Siea, Heitzapka, Entha Swielt, Tenitzen Altstaminis, Ait na Quanasilam Nala, Heitzapka, CM na Siea. Good morning, my respected friends and relatives. It is my privilege and honor to be here, sharing the stage with such incredible people. I thank you for spending a little bit of time with me this morning while I share some ideas and some stories, some things I've been thinking about. But before I begin, I'd like to teach you or invite you to learn how to say thank you in the local language, the language of my people here. And we do that in two ways. We raise our hands and we say, Haichka. Oh, that was good. It was a little bit cautious. Let's try again. Raise your hands. Not like this. My grandmother says, never put your hands like this, granddaughter. Raise your hands. Put your head up. Keep your chin up and say, Haichka. Now look at that view. Stand up and let's do that again. Raise your hands. Look at the snow-covered mountains. And with your heart, join me in saying, Haichka. My English name is Denise Augustine. I'm the daughter of Kwatlamat and David Marston. On my mother's side, I have Coast Salish and Portuguese ancestry, and on my father's side, I have English, French, and Métis ancestry. So folks, there's a party going on in here. And today, this party wants to celebrate. I've been here since Sunday. I've had the good fortune of being here since Sunday, and we are in a fantastic time in history. We are seeing the beginning of a true transformation in education, something that my people have waited a long, long time for. But education hasn't always been like this, especially not in BC. For thousands of years, my people have lived, worked, and played on this beautiful land. And they had babies, and they raised those babies to be productive, contributing members of a complex community. And then the newcomers came, those from Europe came, and my community continued to work, live, and play on this land and teach the newcomers how to adapt to the environment. But then things went sideways, or backwards, my grandmother would say. And the government adopted a policy of getting rid of the Indian problem. And one part of that policy was to take children away from their families as young as 4 and 5 years old and put them in schools where they were underfed, denied the right to speak their language, denied the right to practice their culture, and most importantly, denied the right to have the love and care of their family. My grandmother went to residential school, and she survived the trauma of that experience. But here's the thing that blows my mind. Every day she got her kids to school, the 6 kids that she had, because even though that happened to her, she understood that education was important. My mother graduated from high school, and as she was preparing to graduate, she went to the counselor and said, I want to be a doctor. And the counselor said, honey, you're an Indian. Indians can't become doctors. It's far too difficult. The most you can hope for is to be a nurse. She went on to be a nurse, and she raised 7 children, of which I'm the oldest. She also got her BA in arts and her master's in Indigenous government and became the first Coast Salish carver to make a living as a carver. And she continues to be a practicing artist and a guest lecturer at the local university. Education has changed a lot. I'm glad we're not in that world anymore. We're entering a new world. Milton did a fabulous job of talking about the possibilities that are open to us. More today than ever before, we have access to information. And we have the tools that we need to really transform education. Not modify it, not change it, not improve it, but to transform it. Schakaleno, one of my elders, tells a story about transformation, and hopefully you'll indulge me while I share with you. It was a beautiful morning, much like today. And at the top of a tall tree sat Yahwala, the eagle. And he looked out over the land. He viewed the mountains and the forests and the ocean. And as he was contemplating where he would go to get his breakfast, he heard the howl of a wolf. He didn't give it much thought, and he flew down to the river and grabbed himself a salmon. The next morning, again, Yahwala was sitting at the top of the tall tree, surveying the land, and again he heard the cry of the wolf. And he flew down to a branch nearby because the wolf sounded so sad. And he said to the wolf, "My friend, my brother wolf, what's wrong, Stakea?" And wolf said, "I'm old and I'm blind. I can no longer hunt and look after myself." And Yahwala said, "I'll help you." So he flew to the river and got a salmon and brought it back and dropped it down for Wolf. And Wolf said nothing. He just devoured the salmon. That night, Yahwala heard Wolf howl again. And he flew down and he said, "Wolf, not to worry. I'll go get you another salmon." And Wolf said, no, Yahwala. You can't do that. And Eagle said, "Why? Why not?" "Well, what are you going to do? You're going to go get me salmon tomorrow? And a salmon the next day? What about the day after that?" "No, I can't accept that." And Eagle was quiet for a moment, and then he said, "Okay, I've got a plan." And Wolf started to protest, and he said, "Wolf, be quiet, just listen to me, I have a plan. But it goes like this: you have to trust me. I'm going to come down tomorrow morning at daybreak, and I want you to follow me. I'll fly low so you can hear the sound of my wings. And you have to trust me, and don't stop no matter what. Just follow me." Wolf was tired, and he said, "Okay, sounds like a plan." Next morning, a morning much like this, Eagle flew down, woke Wolf, and started to fly. And Wolf ran. He had to run. It wasn't a walking pace. It was a running pace. And he kept on running. And he ran and he ran. And he soon started to smell the ocean. And he kept on running until he ran off the edge of a cliff and into the ocean. And Wolf felt himself start to drown. And then something happened. And he transformed and raised to the surface as a killer whale. Wolf had transformed. When I think about transformation in education, this is what I'm thinking about. I'm thinking about something that my grandmother would not recognize. In order for this to happen, to continue to happen, because I think we're well on our way, I believe there's 3 things that we really need to keep doing. I think we need to be able to recognize the gifts that each of our learners is entering with. And in order to do that, first we need to look inside. I need to know the story that I'm living my life with. I need to know the assumptions and the biases that I view the world with. And then I need to step into the world of the learners that I'm working with. A young woman came up to one of my colleagues and started to explain the familial relationships among the different students in the school and among some of the staff. It would have been really hard to recognize the gift that she had if the teacher didn't understand the importance genealogy plays in my community. But because she had spent time in the community learning, she recognized that gift. The second thing I think we need to do is to nurture those gifts. So if the gifts are as personalized as needing to know for something like genealogy, how do we create an environment where we can nurture each of those gifts? And we're seeing that happen. I've heard so many stories in the last 4 days. Brandon is a grade 11 student at one of our local high schools. And he said to his teacher, Vanessa, I want to learn about salmon. And Vanessa said, why, Brandon, why salmon? Well, he said, because I'm from the salmon people. Okay. So then she started to find places for him to gather more information, to start to personalize his learning. She connected him with the local salmon fish hatchery. She connected him with some of the canoe people. He's just one story out of this class of 30 where each student has identified a passion or an interest. I wouldn't even say passion. I would say an interest. And that interest is being nurtured. The third thing I think we need to do is we need to figure out how to celebrate each learner's learning. If we're going to personalize their learning experiences, doesn't it make sense that we're going to personalize how we celebrate their accomplishments? In my community, we have many ways of standing people up, and sometimes it's for rites of passage, but often it's in recognition of some kind of challenge that an individual has overcome, and we stand them up publicly, and we acknowledge them. I'm wondering if we can find ways in education to do that same thing, so that our celebrations aren't an arbitrary, oh, now you get to move from grade 6 to grade 7, or here's your report card, or you're 18, good luck. But they're actually authentic celebrations of what each child's learning. Like Fred said, in this room, we have the collective wisdom to do this. Teachers and administrators and support staff are some of my favorite people in the world. And today has been no exception. The conversations that I've been hearing this week have filled my heart with joy. I am so grateful. I am so grateful because I think that for my grandchildren, who I don't have yet, I'm imagining they're going to go into an educational experience where they have a deep sense of belonging. And I'll use the word belonging like Brené Brown uses the word belonging. It's not tucking little pieces of yourself away so that you can fit in. It's about showing up as a whole person. And what if we do that for our educators as well? What if we make space for them to show up as whole people and trust that they have the wisdom, the drive, the passion, and the love to continue to improve the experience of our learners? If we do these three things, if we recognize, nurture, and celebrate the gifts that each of us has, I believe that we're going to support our children in becoming collaborative, creative, courageous, critical thinking problem solvers, more than capable of handling the challenges of the global community. And my friends, with our collective wisdom, I think that's how we'll change the world to be better for the children, for the generations yet to come. Haitzapka siem nasiya. Haitzapka.
Wow. Powerful. Thank you, Denise. Thank you for reminding us to recognize the gifts in all of our kids. And thank you also for reminding us about how we have to pay attention to our own biases before we learn the stories of our children. So thank you so much. Another round of applause, please, for Denise Augustine. We're going to celebrate the learners who are our children and the learners who are our adults, those of you in this room. One of the things that I asked you to do before each of those sessions began was to think about, so what commitment are you making to take some of the ideas, not just from this session, but from this entire conference, and use what you've learned, not just so you, and I sent a tweet out earlier, it's not learning just to know something. It's learning so that you can do something on behalf of our children and the children who count on you for that learning. So what are you going to do? What commitment are you going to make so that that learning has a chance to somehow see itself manifest in work and challenges and opportunities for our children in the classrooms, and not only in this province, this beautiful province, but across this beautiful country, across all of North America, and of course, across the world. You know, if I can leave you with one final thought before we transition, in this room, there's probably a classroom of children represented by one of the teachers in this room where there's an idea that that child has in that classroom. It's an idea that might change the world. And we know that that's so important right now as we look at our world and the challenges that we face. So as teachers, as teacher leaders, as principals, as division leaders or district leaders, it's so important that we create the teaching and learning environments in our schools so that that idea, that one idea has a chance to see the light of day, because we may need that idea to change the world. So I hope that you will make that commitment. I hope that you will be the kind of teacher that celebrates the gifts of our children so that all of those ideas have a chance to see the light of day and make a difference for all of us, not just in this room, but across this world. Another thing I just want to say before we transition out of our conference, has it been a great time here in Vancouver? Has anyone had fun besides me? They don't know that I'm about to do this, but I'm going to ask our host committee if you would come up and join me one last time to say goodbye to all of our family here in Vancouver. Host committee, come on up to the stage. They have no idea this is about to happen. Welcome and say thank you to the Vancouver host committee. Come on up. Anybody want to wear the, anybody, anyone? Somebody, anybody? That's okay. We will see you in Orlando, Florida. Have a great rest of your time here in Vancouver. Thank you. All right, thank you all.